learner support in digital age. So let me brief you all um, about Dr. Rita. She's associate professor and currently the head of e-learning in medical education department, School of Medicine, Tehran University of Medical Sciences. Um, Dr. Rita's field of expertise is instructional design, one of my favorite area also of e-learning system, and she has performed several developmental and research projects in the field of e-learning and medical education in Iran, some of which are as follows: academic ranking of medical schools, metric systems for faculties, members, activities, design and establishment of e-continuous medical education or ECME, National Institutional Accreditation System of e-learning centers. Wow, that's great. Like national level, she have contributed a lot. Development and establishment of Iran's national massive open online courses or MOOCs, learning management system, LMS platforms, and she has published several articles and books in related fields. Right. Prof. Shebi, if you want to say a few words before we give the floor to Dr. Rita.
All I would say is that we are grateful to Rita for contributing so much to the development and evolution of the educational process that we started about 4 years ago. Now it will be entering 5 years. Rita and her husband, Ayn, they're like a family to us. They're wonderful scholars. We're proud and privileged and honored to have them here. Rita, over to you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Firstly, let me appreciate your kind words, Professor Shabi and Hasnain. You are like our family from another country too, and we feel very sincere with your team. And it's a pleasure that you trust me and you, provide me with this opportunity to be a part of your wonderful efforts to expand the domain of medical education and let's say technology enhanced learning. And with your permission, I would like to start the presentation. The title is Learner Support in Digital Age because digitalization has imposed some challenges and some opportunities upon what we call student support. So in this brief, let's say, lecture, we are going to review the definition of learner support systems, the reasons to have such systems, its domains and models, and then we are going to become familiar with the term scaffolding in the education, which is somehow the theoretical background of any support system. And then we are going to understand who is in charge of these systems and impact of ICT on learner support systems. And finally, we are going to review its effectiveness and the challenges that institutes, schools, and instructors have while they want to establish and provide such systems. Let's start with the first one. What is learner support system? There are so many definitions about these kind of support systems. If you look at the literature, sometimes they have, limited the definition to some aspects, systemic aspects, like, for example, providing dormitory, providing loans to students, and so on. But the main pedagogical definition for learner support is more than that. It is a set of services and resources that are provided to students, to enhance their learning experience and their overall well-being. So it has two main goals. And it is said that it is crucial in both traditional and e-learning environments because the history of student support systems, it is initiated by the effort of Open University of UK, and Professor Alan Ted, he is the pioneer of this field. And because it has been initiated from distance learning environments and a university with distance mode, somehow for many years it was assumed that it is a concept that is important for distance learners, distance system and distant learners. But gradually they understood that it is not the case, and the traditional students and teaching learning institutes should pay special attention to learner support as well. In another words, learner support services, which we can call it LSS or SSS, student support services or systems, they are human, technical, and administrative resources that are available to learners. And the point is that they include both academic and non-academic support. So it is not limited to academic ones. And the other point, they are complementary to the formal delivered content. It means that if you deliver a curriculum, the main route that they are delivering to your students, it is not the support. It is the main road of their study, main journey of their study. But the complementary assets that you deliver to students in order to enhance their learning experience and well-being, they are called support services. Now, let's look at the reasons for learner support systems. The main goal is the providing equal opportunity for success for all students. How? Through resolving the barriers of their engagement in learning and teaching. These barriers could be cognitive ones and academic ones or non-academic ones, but we try to provide an equal opportunity for all of our students and to understand their status and to have an empathy with them so that we can help them to learn better and be engaged in the teaching learning process. So there are several, reasons mentioned in the literature, like adapting to new environment for newcomers, students, newcomers to the university, improving academic performance, improving students' confidence, their emotional and social well-being, their financial guidance and assistance, reducing dropout rates, career preparation, and something like language skills for international students. They are the instances that you can hear in the literature. You can read in the literature about the examples or instances of student support services. But there are different, researchers who have classified these services. And one of the classifications that I like is dividing these services into 4 categories of academic success, student well-being, social integration, and overall satisfaction. For example, when you provide personalized guidance or academic assistance or career counseling, these efforts are related to academic success. And for the student well-being, there are examples like providing psychological counseling, stress management and well-being programs, or peer support groups. When you establish peer support groups and you provide an environment for students to help each other, they are some examples of students' well-being support systems. And when it comes to social integration, you can name, for example, orientation and transition programs. For example, in medical education, as you know, when the students want to transfer to clinical wards in many universities, for example, in our own university, they have transition programs in order to become familiar and feel safe in a clinical environment. And the other examples are student clubs or international student supports. They are social integration instances of student support. And finally, when it comes to some examples of overall satisfaction, you can name enhanced student experience, increased retention and graduation rates, and the positive reputation of the university. When the students are studying in a high-rank university, a well-known university, their sense of well-being and their, motivation for learning would increase. So these kind of efforts are some kind of student support as well. So in this part, we are going to review the dimensions and models of learner support systems. There are so many models, so many classifications, but one of the main ones that is so cited in the literature is the one provided by that Professor Alan Ted from Open University, that he divided student support services into 3 dimensions of cognitive, affective, and systemic supports. In cognitive domain, there are examples like self-assessment, inquiry-based tasks, feedback on performance, or providing further references to the students for studying and reading. You can see that in this level, the support is directly related to studying and helping a student to have a better experience of learning. When it comes to affective domain, there are some examples like providing supplemental instruction. For example, you can detect weak students and provide extra classes for them. Establishing learner centers. These centers are really good ones. They are the centers that students can refer to them, and they help these students to promote their studying skills, metacognitive skills, clinical reasoning, and so on. So these learning centers somehow, they cure the students that have difficulty with studying and learning. Peer mentoring, supporting a struggling student, they are the instances that effectively support the whole or specific groups of our students. And when it comes to systemic dimension, some examples like financial support, sport facilities, IT help desk, they are the ones that are, categorized under the term systemic student support services. This categorization helps us a lot. And pay attention, please, that there are some instances that they are, they cover 2 or all 3 aspects of this classification. For example, if there is a student who is in need of financial support and you provide in the university, you provide loan for this student, the student is effectively supported as well, and this helps to study better. So at the end point, the student is cognitively supported too. So when you do something that is called support, sometimes you cover 2 or all of these aspects. I asked AI tool, Copilot, and I asked this tool to, in its own words, it says the opinion it has about these domains. I wonder to call it he, she, these artificial intelligence tools, they are somehow more than artificial when you are working with them. Anyhow, this Copilot just said that cognitive student support recognizes that learners are active participants in their learning journey. By aligning instructional strategies with cognitive processes, educators can create a more effective and engaging learning environment. In my opinion, that I teach a student support to PhD and MSc students, this is a great brief description about cognitive student support. And the same is for what it said about affective. It said that affective student support acknowledges that emotions play a significant role in learning. Creating an emotionally secure environment helps students thrive. And finally, for systemic student support, it said, systemic student support goes beyond individual interventions. It transforms the entire educational ecosystem to promote equity, well-being, and success for every student. So I suppose that with this, clear explanations or descriptions, we can understand what each of these dimensions are talking about. There are other models as well in the literature. For example, Professor Atkins has proposed a model called ARCS. A stands for affective, S stands for systemic, and C stands for cognitive, and that R stands for reflective domain. And he emphasized on helping the learners to clarify their objectives and feelings about their studies. I know that you can categorize this reflective domain under the umbrella of cognitive, but the aim of Professor Atkins is to emphasize on reflective learning and the importance and critical role of reflection in learning. I like and I prefer this model because reflection plays a crucial role in medical education, as you know, because of its complexity and the environment of clinical education. Reflective domain, when it is emphasized, it helps instructors and authorities to think of these aspects besides cognitive, systemic, and affective ones to support medical sciences students. Also, there are other classifications in the literature. For example, this one is the result of the PhD thesis of one of our students. It is specifically for e-learning environment and e-teaching, that it has categorized the learner support systems into the ones related to teaching learning process, structural support, empowerment, and communication interactions. It was the result of a qualitative research. And for example, the difference is that the emphasis is on faculty and student development, that in the other models, it is not directly mentioned. So let's forget about the models. And I love this term of scaffolding in learning and education. Scaffolding is a term that is in common in all models. I mean that if you read about all models or classification related to student support systems, there is a common background concept that you encounter, and that is scaffolding the learners. What do we mean by scaffolding in teaching and learning process? You know that a scaffold is a temporary structure that the constructors build to support workers while constructing a building. So it has transferred like a metaphor to teaching learning context, and it describes again a temporary guidance system that is offered to learners by teachers and, let's say, institutes, jointly co-constructed and then removed when the learner no longer needs it. So the concept is like a metaphor. It exactly mimics what a scaffold means in construction. It is temporary. When the work is finished, when the goal is achieved, you pick up your scaffold and go. And the same is when it comes to a student empowerment to achieve a competency or a skill. How to scaffold? There are some ways that I have picked just 4 of them for this presentation. For example, a teacher can reduce the scope of failure in a task that the learner is attempting. It means that the teacher can help the student in need of help so that he or she is not frustrated about her or his effort. The other example is enabling learners to accomplish a task that they would not be able to achieve on their own. This is a significant problem in medical education context when it comes to clinical education. And because of the busy environment of clinical education, sometimes we are not aware that the student is not capable to do a procedure by her or his own. And the student, let's say the poor student, really needs help and needs guidance so that step by step, the task can be done on his or her own. The other example is moving learners to a new and improved zone of understanding. Sometimes we as educators, we forget that students are not capable to open new horizons related to their career or studying and what they are going to experience in advance. So sometimes we scaffold our learners through showing them new horizons or new zones of understanding regarding a specific topic, career opportunities, and some other instances that they need. And the last example is bring learners closer to a state of independent competence. Another problem, especially in clinical education, is this one, that sometimes we show something, some procedure to the student, and we think that it's enough. The student can conduct this by his own or her own. It's not the case. Sometimes it is an step-by-step guidance to independency to perform or conduct a task. I'm not going to go to the theoretical background of student support and scaffolding, but only this theory, it is a really famous one when it comes to student support services and scaffolding. And it is the work of Vygotsky, one of the famous educational psychologists, that he had a theory, the zone of proximal development. I read the exact sentence for you, and please look at the picture next to the text. It represents the space between what a learner is capable of doing unsupported. It means the inner circle in the picture, and what the learner cannot do even with the support, the outer circle. And there is a circle between these two. It is the range where the learner is able to perform, but only with support from a teacher or a peer with more knowledge or expertise. So this, circle between the two ones is called zone of proximal development. And we, as educators or the authorities of schools and colleges and universities, should pay attention to deliver support services that cover this circle. So there is a gap between the time that learner can do something without any aid and the time that he needs exactly support, a good support to do the task. And gradually he can have enough competence and confidence to conduct the task independently. And this is the target of student support systems. And I suppose that when we are teaching as educators, it is not very difficult for us to estimate this zone of proximal development in our classes for our students, because the experts, if they think they can understand what is the gap for their learners. But unfortunately, sometimes we educators don't pay attention to this, let's say beautiful theory, because I love it. I love the concept. And from the time that I have learned this theory, I pay attention to it intentionally in my teaching learning process, or when I am, they are consulting me about instructional design of any system. Student support services always play a significant role, and I try to understand what is the zone of this proximal development in that specific context that they are counseling about with me. So pay attention to this theory. This is the basic theory for any support system, and scaffolding, that is the common term of student support services in all the literature related to this field. Now let's see who is in charge. Till now, most of what we said had shown you who is in charge, but let's have a brief review. There are different levels of the authorities that are in charge of providing learner support, from university level to school or department level, and finally instructors when they are teaching. So at the university levels, strategies adoption regarding LSS is very important. Sometimes, we are not thinking systematically when it comes to providing support to our students. Clear rules and regulations, financial facilities, providing, acceptable and appropriate dormitories, libraries, and so on. They are the efforts that are performed at university level. When it comes to school or department, monitoring a student's progress, in-time announcements, and so on. And finally, when it comes to instructors, clear course plan, effective learning activities, providing feedback to students' performance, encouraging weak students to be engaged in the class and improve. They are the instances that a teacher can do and can pay attention while teaching in the class. So you can see that almost everyone who is working in the university is in charge of providing learner support systems. And let's now review that. What is the impact of ICT on learner support systems? One of the tangible impacts is providing more accessibility, and it helps democratizing access to the services, because with digital tools, you can provide remote services to all learners all over the world in remote areas. So the accessibility is one of the tangible impacts of ICT and digitalization on LSS. The other one is personalization. You know that when it comes to, digital era, you can have plan to cover individual needs, learning styles, and progress of the students. Almost it is not feasible if you want to have personalized feedback or guidance or support in face-to-face interactions, because it takes a lot of time. It needs a large number of staff, and it is not possible to conduct such personalization in face-to-face traditional setting. But when it comes to e-learning or remote services, it becomes more feasible. The other, impact is the ability to provide 24 hours, 7 days a week support, especially when it comes to instances like IT help desk. So it is clear that you cannot do it in traditional face-to-face communications, but you can announce good help desk to your students so that all the hours with 24 hours, 7 days a week, they can have access to specific kinds of services. The other impact is data-driven insights. I suppose all of us love this aspect, that is, making decision and intervening based on collected data on student performance. Let's say something like learning analytics, or the mechanisms of artificial intelligence. They help us even in personalization of our decision making and intervening to students, and also it helps us to understand the pitfalls of our educational system as a whole, to diagnose the pitfalls, to predict what is going to happen, and then it helps us a lot to have evidence-based decision making. The other impact is providing the facility for peer support. Again, when it comes to virtual space and networking and social networks, it is more feasible to provide a space for students to help each other and run even mentorship programs in the social networks for the students. Again, when it comes to face-to-face interaction, it will become limited. So this is the other impact of ICT on student support. And finally, this is the last one that I mentioned in this presentation. I have picked up the most repeated, let's say, or important ones. The last one that we are going to review is skill development. These digital platforms offer a good chance of skill development for students. For example, for students' well-being, you can provide them with well-being apps, stress management apps, fitness apps, study skill apps, I don't know, metacognitive, you can teach them metacognitive skills through these digital apps and so on. So again, the students can learn their skills and meta skills without the limitation of time and space, in their own pace and according to their own individualized needs. For example, you can see that nowadays there are some digital facilities that are related to student support systems using and they are widespread in the universities, even in traditional face-to-face programs. One of them is, for example, virtual advising, psychological or educational advising of students. Many universities all over the world have, established virtual advising systems. Learning management systems, when it comes to traditional programs, sometimes they play the role of student scaffolding, and scaffolding their learning through providing the content, providing the supplementary material and references to them, or dividing the students so that they can help struggling students to achieve the goals and so on. Online tutoring system, mental health apps, peer mentoring platforms, and online career services like the ones that we know all of us, job search platforms, CV builders, and so on. They are the instances of digital facilities with regard to student support that we are sure that they help our students in this regard. Again, I asked this AI2, Mr. or Mrs. Copilot, to state what is the impact of digitalization on learner support services. It said that technology isn't a magic wand, it's an enabler. Effective student support still requires empathy, understanding, and human connection. As we embrace digitalization, let's ensure it enhances, not replaces, the caring touch that defines great student support. You know, I had to add 2 or 3 slides to cover this concept, that nowadays it seems that we prefer a blended approach to student support services. We deliver online, for example, psychological advisory or counseling system, but there are students that they seek for face-to-face counseling services. So it is preferred to build a student support system that we have intentionally and precisely designed it so that we can understand which parts should be delivered in virtual mode, which part in face-to-face mode, and which ones even in blended mode. So this was a great sentence again from this Copilot engine. And the last part of the presentation is about student support services effectiveness and challenges. Let's review the characteristics of an effective student support system. The first one, it is purposeful. It means that when we are establishing or when we are thinking of a support to our students, we should be clear about the purpose that we want to achieve. And if it is not purposeful, it is not used by a student. It should be transparent. I think all over the world, even high-ranked universities, this is the problem, that sometimes we provide the student services, support services, but they are not transparent for our students. It is somehow vague how to use it, how you can have access to it, you know? So you should be transparent. It should be accessible. Sometimes we, establish something that is very difficult to be accessible for our students. It should be responsive. It means that we should cover the needs of our students, and the needs are changing. And we should be responsive to the needs, to the real needs of the students. It should be interactive. It means that when you're establishing or thinking of student support services, especially when you're thinking as a whole system in your department, in your school, or at university level, it should be an interactive, and you should have feedback from students and users of the systems, and even involve them while thinking of designing your student support system. It should be developmental. It means that you should think of new strategies, new instances, the new ways of delivering some kind of support. And it is not something static that is established once and used for example, 10 years. No, it is a developmental process. The other thing is that it is integrated. It means that the supports that you provide to your learners should be integrated so that they are meaningful. Imagine an educator that when he is thinking of the student support services in the classroom, in his teaching or learning process, the instances are separately, and sometimes they are opposite to each other. It is not integrated. It should be integrated in your teaching learning process, and it should have somehow consistency with other instances of support in the school, at the university level, and other instances in your own class. And the last one, it should be open to change. Sometimes we establish a support, we define a support, and it doesn't work out We should be open to change it. And now let's cover the main challenges of learner support systems and propose short solutions, of course. The first one, inconsistent approach to student support. Please think of your own, school or department. And think of instances of student support that are provided to your students. Sometimes you see that they are not consistent with each other. Different parts of or different sections or offices of the school provide some kind of support that are not related to each other. So when it comes to establishing a system of student support, the methodology of establishing of that system should be shared within different let's say sections of an educational organization, what the level is. The second challenge that is popular is one size fits all approaches. So sometimes we provide something for every student. For example, online counseling service for all of the students. We should consider that sometimes personalized support should be our agenda. Not all the time, but some kind of personalization is fundamental in some services to be used even. It means that if you provide a one size fits all service, maybe most of the students, they do not prefer to use it. The third challenge is students at need aren't receiving support. This is an interesting fact because we provide supports, especially cognitive ones, and sometimes the students who are exactly at need, and they should be helped. They are not the ones that use those supports because they are not interested, they have not paid attention, they are not engaged in the system in a way that they understand or be alert of the supports that are delivered. So students at need sometimes are the missing ones. So when it comes to educators and administrators, we should develop strategies for proactive student outreach, struggling students who need help. They should be detected systematically and be informed and be encouraged to use the provided facility and support. The next challenge is limited resources. As usual, we have limitation when we want to establish something, especially because some instances of student support services, they need money, staff. Only imagine that you can provide a 24-hour, 7 days a week IT help desk for all the students in your university. You can understand it needs resources, budget, staff, system, and so on. So sometimes this limitation makes us to prioritize student support instances, and according to the needs, we should pay attention to the ones that we think are more useful, more crucial. Maybe most of the more students may benefit from that. It is, and they are going to be our top agenda for establishment. And the last challenge that today I am going to cover is changing needs of the students. I cannot say fortunately or unfortunately, but what we see is that the generation of students are rapidly changing, and there are, the differences between, for example, generation X and Y is much less than the differences between generation Z and Alpha, who are our next generation of our university students, this Alpha generation. And these ongoing changes should be considered when you are establishing a student support service. For example, there was a time that maybe you needed library spaces to expand them physically, but nowadays many students, they don't prefer to study print books. And the generation alpha students, I suppose that they are more adapted to read ebooks rather than physical books. So these ongoing need assessment would help us to establish a student support that is, received and used by our generation, different generations of students. And as a conclusion, I was just thinking how to conclude the session. I put some slides and then I deleted them. Why? Because when I was preparing this presentation and revising my previous one regarding a student, I had a presentation of student support and I revised it completely for this session. Suddenly I was thinking, I found myself thinking of myself. And I, read this sentence from Bill Gates. Students deserve great teachers, and teachers deserve the support they need to become great. I mean that I was just thinking of myself that I'm responsible to provide support system and support services to my students. As I am the dean of my department, the head of my department, in both positions of being a faculty member, a teacher, and being a department head, I am responsible to, provide services. But who cares for me? I mean that you see lots of lectures, webinars, and books with regard to student support services, but we pay minimum attention to our teacher support services. Hope that our next talk in CEBU webinars will be teacher support services. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm ready if there is any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rita, for a wonderful talk. I think I will ask Prof. Shabi if he wants to ask something or concluding remarks before I conclude.
Concluding will be much later. I think lots of chats there. Stand that you have a look at. Could I just say that, Rita, you just gave a wonderful topic, that the next topic should be teachers' support system. So when can you give us a date for that lecture?
Yes, I know. I just decided to work on it.
Okay.
Because I have not, systematically read anything, but I suppose that I'm going to even to have a thesis. I will assign a student to this topic, that we need to support our faculty members. When we talk about supporting our medical educators, I suppose that in most universities, it is some kind of, for example, capacity building programs.
Yes.
Or some, affairs like, some systemic affairs like loans, I don't know, something like that. But we don't think of a comprehensive system for our faculty members. And I suppose that Bill Gates is right. Faculty members should be supported to deliver a good support to students.
So I'll tell Sakina to contact you for next year.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Asna.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Prof. Shabi. Okay, Dr. Rita, there is a question from Dr. Laila. Given that nowadays intelligent tutoring systems can provide numerous support for learners, what kind of support is more important to be provided by human teachers? I guess it would be effective support. How can a teacher effectively provide this kind of support in e-learning?
Let's say affective domain or dimension is the prominent one that maybe a student seek for face-to-face support in many instances, not all the time. But when it comes to even cognitive support, there are instances that students seek for, face-to-face interaction. I give you an example. We have we had a project in our department that after one semester of our master degree students, we, had a session at the department level in our department. All the faculty members, they shared their ideas about the students and the head of the department, and then talked provided feedback to each individual student about the progress, about the status, the opinion of teachers or professors about the student, and so on. And we understood that when we had these sessions in virtual mode, for example, in Zoom like this, even with webcams open, the effect is not like the one that we provide in person. So even in cognitive domain, it depends on the context and the instance of that support and the style of the learner. And in my opinion, maybe it is the topic of our next session, the style of the teacher even. Because some teachers are great for face-to-face interactions. Some teachers are capable to provide an effective feedback or an effective scaffolding technique in virtual format too. And for the second part of the question, that is how we can provide support services in e-learning, even if you search scaffolding techniques in e-learning, you can find different techniques, precise techniques that helps you to be an effective, supportive teacher in both synchronous and asynchronous e-learning environment. For example, for synchronous environment, I give you only some examples, okay? If you are aware of the participation of your students in the class, if you use chat box, the simple chat box, as a good method for a student engagement and, seeking their attention to the class, they are instances of student support in cognitive domain for a synchronous class. I had a large scale class, more than 100 students in a virtual class synchronous one. And I thought that even if I say, for example, everyone who is online should send 5 in the chat box, they send via different devices instead of their friends. So I had a table in my presentations, and according to their family name alphabets, I had a mathematic formula. For example, the ones that starts with A, B, and C should say, for example, 5 multiple 5 minus 2. What it is, let's write it in the chat box. And you have, for example, 30 seconds, okay? And then I had the report of the chat box. And from the first session to the next session, they declared that we understood that you pay attention to us and we need to be online ourselves. So my aim was not, to calculate their presence or absence. My aim was that they should pay attention to the class. Or for asynchronous learning, again, I have a course with medical students at 5th semester about digital literacy, and it is a 2-credit course. And I suppose that it is interesting for them. And we have in that course that is blended of asynchronous learning within LMS and let's say in-person sessions. In in-person sessions, we have serious games, short micro serious games that takes only, for example, 15 minutes. But between the class, we are going to play a serious game, and the team that wins this competition, this game, will receive something like a sticker, a cartonic one, and we call it is a question bonus. It means that at the final exam, if they give us to us, we will say the answer of one question to them. Any question that they choose. For example, they call me and they say, Professor, number 10, what is the answer? The student gives me that sticker, and I provide the answer to, and I give the answer to the student. So they are engaged in the face-to-face classes. And also, you see that in we have gamified the asynchronous part. For example, one of their tasks is creating a LinkedIn account with minimum of 20 connections. So everybody who does it and send the links via LMS will receive a coin from us in Excel, Google Excel sheet, the shared space that they can see the leaderboard. For every activity, they receive coins, and then they receive badges. And finally, the winner who has conducted every steps, if he answers half of the questions of the final exam, we will give 20 to them. 20, the score of 20. I suppose that we are generous to them, okay? This gamification process is a kind of a scaffolding learning, affective and cognitive. So they do their tasks, their assignments, they are present at classes, in-person classes. They are studying within the term, during the semester, not at the end for the final exam. And the ones that succeed this process have the bonus to answer to the half of the questions of the final exam to receive 20 out of 20. So when it comes to asynchronous, you can have different scaffolding techniques. Personally, because of my character, I love game-based learning and gamification, even for large size classes. I hope that I have been able to answer you, dear
Yes,
Leila.
yes, Dr. Rita. I think the feedback already given by Dr. Rila, and she enjoyed your explanation. And she actually just clarified that it seems that in case we want to provide support, we need to show our presence, could be in multiple ways, That's great. Yeah, so we have another question, but I don't know, is assessment and feedback possible via this, what you have shared?
For sure, there are lots of cases that a student participate in a summative final exam. Their grades are announced, but nobody provides individual feedback, and they don't know which questions they have given the correct answers and which questions the wrong one. At least in our school, in our medical school, this happens. That some of our exams, students are not aware of the result. They just receive a point. So when it comes to assessment, some techniques of student support is briefing your students about their mistakes, especially informative ones, preferably in summative ones, and we should consider self-assessment as a powerful scaffolding strategy, providing the opportunity of self-assessment. I have a running project that we are writing the proposal. I am going to examine or assess the impact of exam wrapper for our students, because I suppose that our medical students, because we accept medical students directly from high school, they do not enter any college or any bachelor degree. They are genius ones, they are intelligent, the top ranked students, but immediately after high school, they enter university, and they are not familiar with study skills needed for studying medicine or dentistry curriculum, any field in the medical sciences. And they continue the way that they had studied for that entrance exam to the university, that does not work out for studying in the university. Text wrappers are some kind of student scaffolding techniques that you help students from 1 month or 2 months before the exam to reflect. This is the reflective dimension of scaffolding, to reflect on the ways that he or she studies, the ways that should be improved, what she or he does in a specific exam, and what should be improved for upcoming exams. So you can see even some kind of text wrapper that is not so difficult to establish in your department, in your school, will be an instance of self-assessment, self-reflection, and providing feedback that constitutes a good, constructs a good, really wonderful student support service.
Okay, good. Dear participants, if you have any other question, please feel free to post in the chat. I just want to clarify, Dr. Rita, when you were sharing challenges of, learner support services, and you mentioned about digitalizing and all that, do you conduct study of readiness of infrastructure? Because once we raise the bar of our service by providing through digital media, and what's your backup plan when we don't have that infrastructure?
Dear Hassan, you're the professor of tools, I suppose. I call you like it in our community when I recommend my colleagues to participate in your sessions. I say that Hassan is the genius, professor of digital tools. But in my opinion, when we want to establish scaffolding techniques or support services, we can simplify the strategy at the level that we have facilities. For example, it is good that the LMS, an LMS has gamification features. Our LMS Navi does not have such a facility. What did I do? I used shared Google and Google Sheet, Excel sheet, and Google Docs, so that I shared the points and badges over there. So it is not the case that all services or all instances of support should have a digital infrastructure. Sometimes we should think of solutions. I always say that when you design, when you are an instructional designer, even when you are a teacher and you design your course, you should be able to find simple solutions for complicated situations. Sometimes the solutions are so simple that the others that look at your solution, they say that how easy it is. But when they want to mimic, they cannot, because the situation is a complex one, but the solution is a simple one. So scaffolding techniques, let's talk about talk about just in the instructor level, because most of us are at this level, we are involved in teaching learning. Especially at instructor level, you don't have any problem. You have so many opportunities to provide support to your students. So we look at the facilities that the schools provide for us, but we do not limit ourselves within their limitations. They can put limitations. No, don't worry. You do what you want.
Sure. I think any last question?
Dr. Hassan, can I have a comment?
Please.
First of all,
Shahid.
Prof. I'm Shahid from Barbados, American University of Barbados. Prof. Rita, thank you very much once again for your very eye-opening, I would say. For me, it was an eye-opening session with you. When I say eye-opening, actually, learning support, how important it is if I create a scenario and just ask all those who have been running the medical schools or curriculum, we are proud to say our intake is 3 GPA and above. But in the process, when we take cream of the cream students in medical schools, and when they do not perform, I mean, assessment speaks of that. When we assess them, all of them 3 GPA do not get through. There are students who are lower performer and versus upper performance. Who is responsible for that? We are taking our intake is 3 GPA and above, yet some of them do not perform. So because they are coming from different learning environment, school is a rote learning and all, and they come to university is a different environment. Lack of life, the lack of not life support, lack of the learning support is actually the reason for their failure. Not that they are bad students, right? That's one. So who is responsible for that? One question. The other thing is when some of them miserably fail, uh, how many schools really cater for those miserably failing students to have as you mentioned, the for weak students, the special learning support. So do they have? So in AUB, actually, we started decelerated program for those students. We take them out of the stream, and after having extra coaching, we bring them back to this to the stream of the rest of the student. Other thing, your all session today was very close to the approach of the competency-based medical education, where ZPD, which you said the zone of proximal development, was an eye-opening for, because you see the central zone where they cannot do anything without support, then the outer zone where they need support, and the middle, the outer where they can perform independently, and the middle zone where they need support, right? So that theory applies very much to the competency-based medical education approach also. But I say SMART, the acronym we use for developing the objective, SMART T stand for the time bound. In this approach, time bond has got no values. It has to be competence bond, right? So I always change in my developing objective. I tell my faculty, don't follow SMART, don't follow SMARC, RC. C stand for competency based, because competence bond is very important. We shouldn't finish the things on time, knowing that some of them have picked up, some of them not picked up. So your comment on that. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for your kind words first, and then let me. I suppose you have to. You have asked me two questions.
Exactly.
The first one is who is responsible for support, student support, when it comes to the students that do not achieve the minimum standards or fail to, in some way from continuing their studies, or have, weak achievement, let's say, struggling.
And they are the best student taken into the program.
Yes, of course. We, I suppose one of the most competitive societies for entering medical school is Iran, because we accept students from high school, as I said, and less than 1%, less than maybe 0.1 applicants enter medical schools in Iran. So they are really good students, but when they come to school, many of them fail. So even we have students who have gained gold medals in Olympiads, international Olympiads of, for example, biology, physics, but when they come to school, medical school, they fail. And the question is always that who is responsible for them? But in my experience, I have not done a project and I have not read a literature, an article for this question, but in my own experience, the problem is not who is the responsible body. The problem is the other challenge that I mentioned in the challenges. These students are not detected, in an appropriate time. Sometimes they are missed, and we understand that they need help when it comes to difficult times. For example, we are firing them off from the university, or they have become, they have, you know, major depression because of their weak performance at school and so on. So the system, especially with these AI tools and learning analytics tools, should be aware of the performance of the students. I say that if our student administrative systems, if they are equipped with good dashboards for authorities, school dean, department head, educational advisors of students, so that they can see the progress of students, they can, you know, detect that they are going to be weak very soon, for example, within 3 semesters. And even learning analytic solutions and you know, AI solutions helps us predict their status. Maybe if we conduct an algorithm, you can understand that, for example, students who perform weak in these 4 courses between 2 first semesters of studying at university are more prone to be a struggling student when they go to, for example, internship or clerkship, you know? So we should use the digital opportunities. But in most universities, even top-ranked ones, as I read in the literature, there are case studies of experiences of, for example, prediction of a student's status and detecting students that are going to be labeled as struggling students within, for example, upcoming 4 semesters. So this is the case that we can help a student. So it is not, and if we detect the students, then it is easier to align responsible body or responsible authority or responsible person who can help that specific individual student, because it is just like, you know, I always say that in emergency units at hospitals, we have a screening room. Yeah. Every patient, when comes to the emergency unit, he or she should go to the emergency room, screening room, and there a physician would decide if where the patient should go, what is the next step. The exact system should be established for monitoring our students. So using digital tools, we can detect the students at risk, and then with a screening system, advisory screening system, we can decide what the appropriate next step is for that special student. If I understand correctly, your next question, your second question was about the competence.
Weak student. How do we address the weak students?
Yeah, pardon?
How do we address the weak students in the program? Like,
as I told you, learning analytics can help us a lot, because, you know, it is not the case that a student suddenly become a weak student. So with learning analytic algorithms and, you know, following students' progress within the studying, you can even predict your students at risk. We did a project, a research, and we you know, evaluated the correlation between entrance exam of the university score of students and their performance after 3 years of studying medicine, and then after 5 years of studying medicine. Even this simple statistical analysis, which was for about, for example, I suppose 10 years ago, that there was no learning analytic concepts or AI tools, you know, we understood that we can predict to some extent students at risk. You know, from this progress bar, let's say.
Yeah.
And about your second comment about competency-based curriculum and that zoom of approximate,
Development.
Yes, competency.
Proximal development.
Proximal development. We can see you are right. In clinical environment that we have time bound and pressure of time, it is difficult to do that. So we should think of alternative solutions. One of them is simulation. One of them is virtual patients, even simple ones. I mean text-based virtual patients, not so AR or VR simulated patients. Simply text-based interactive scenarios, incorporating individualized learning. So there are solutions. One of them is using simulation so that when the learner comes to your ward and in the pressure of clinical treatment and education at the same time, the student is more ready, more skillful, more knowledgeable. The other strategy is somehow mentorship, establishing a mentorship clinical assistance system for your students. So that, for example, maybe some other peers with more knowledge can help their peers, or, so that before going to higher level of competency acquisition, peers can help them to become more skillful. So if you think of solutions or e-learning facilities, sometimes the activities, for example, for diagnosis or clinical reasoning for diagnosing and differential diagnosis of a patient, it is not necessary to be conducted at bedside teaching. Sometimes before, in the times that it is not in the pressure of time bound, you can practice this decision making or clinical reasoning and diagnosis, management, in another spaces like social networks, like LMS, discussion forums, and so on. So when you have time pressure, you should consider the strategies that help you to bring more skillful and knowledgeable students to the ward and bedside, nearer to the inner circle, let's say.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you very much. You have comprehensively answered my question. Thank you.
And there was something that Leila, one of our colleagues, Leila, said that how can a teacher that was, I suppose, let me say, yes. She said that teaching, cognitive and social presence, these three aspects are inquiry framework of presence for any teacher and learner in virtual space, that we should be present virtually according to teaching aspect, cognitive aspect, and social aspect. That is the aspects of scaffolding learning. That is a famous framework. Thank you for mentioning this one, Leila.
Yeah, I think, okay, there is one more. Okay, yes, COI. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so just to summarize, Dr. Rita, due to time.
Can I just ask Rita one question? You mentioned about the Irani admissions in medical schools from high schools. You take into medical school without interim 2 years or 4 years?
No, in Iran, often they are 18-year-old and they finish their highest school, there is a really competitive and hard exam. We call it concours. And they participate in that concours nationally, and they enter MD degree, medical doctorate degree, that lasts for 7 years. For dentistry, it is about 5.5 years. And for pharmacy, it is about, again, five or 5.5 years. And they are three demanding and the most competitive majors in universities in Iran. And when they come to medical school, they start with basic sciences. And after 5 semesters, they have a comprehensive basic sciences exam. And then they enter pathophysiology, and after, and then they enter, let's say, somehow we call it internship, and then they have another comprehensive exam to become to go to clerkship rotations.
So your 7 years,
for
your
5 semesters, they are medical students, but they don't have clinical exposure. They study basic medical sciences.
Okay, so your 7 years program actually includes 5 years MD and 2 years pre-med, which is
somehow 2.5 years, in some instances 3 years, 6 semesters, and then they go to I mean that they directly enter MD program.
Okay.
But exposure to patients is in 3rd year or in 1st year?
Yeah, sorry?
The exposure to patients, is it in 1st year?
Yes, we have early exposure programs for medical students. I suppose most of them experience this exposure in the 2nd or 3rd semester. Okay. But it is just exposure. I mean that they don't have any task in the wards. In rotations of small groups, they are going to different wards according to their preferences. I mean that some of them select to go to, for example, internal medicine wards. Some of them, they have 3 choices, okay? And they select whatever they think that they like, and they are going to spend 1 or 2, and in some cases 3 or 4 days in that clinical ward. But the program is different in schools. What I told you is in Tehran University that we have a structured early exposure program, and the students love it so much because it is the time that they feel that they are going to become doctors.
Yes.
And they have their, white coats as a doctor in wards, not in basic sciences labs only.
Excellent. Wonderful lecture.
Thank you.
I endorse that. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So just take home message from my side. Okay, what I got from all this your talk, wonderful. You used actually blended approach, and I was really amazed the way you asked Copilot to answer your queries, and I think majority of quotes you shared 100% honestly and accurate. They were telling us don't replace teachers or facilitators, a human with technology just for sake of technology. And even I like and enjoyed your concept of blended games, like they have to play game digital environment, and then they bring the tokens to real world. Wow, that's amazing, So I think with
Hasnan,
yes,
since Prof. Rita is an e-learn expert, can we ask her how much do you allow? The last question, I promise you. How much do you allow? How much do you allow your students for AI usability? And how do you monitor that?
When it comes to these new technologies, sometimes my ideas are somehow strange to my colleagues. But honestly, I think that there was time that we, for example, our maybe grandmas, they didn't have any, let's say, for example, refrigerator in their homes. And then it comes to the time that they had some kind of refrigerator, and it improved and improved and improved. Or cleaners, different cleaners instruments. I suppose that when it comes to AI, it is somehow the way that we should facilitate our efforts. So I let my students to use AI in the course of digital literacy, and I provide a safe environment for them to declare that they have used it. For example, they have an assignment that they should, because one of the aspects of digital literacy as an interesting domain. One of the aspects is presentation skills. Okay, in this era, students should have presentation skills so that they are digitally literate. So one of their tasks is to prepare a presentation, to record it about 10 minutes and send it to us via LMS. And I let them know that they are free to ask AI tool to help them to generate PowerPoint slides. But I asked them to send both versions, the version that the AI tool has generated for them, and the version that they have customized according to the specification and expectations of the course. You know, so they are so happy. They, you know, have their AI tools that they love. Why not? Even for me, I wanted to summarize cognitive, affective, and systemic aspects. It was difficult for me to gather them in one slide, honestly speaking. Suddenly, I thought that I can ask my co-pilot that is open in my Microsoft PowerPoint, you know, window all the time. I asked it, and I suppose the answers were fantastic. With my expertise, I appraised them, of course. I paid attention that they are correct. They are not some kind of hallucination, but the summarization was great.
So your faculty also go training an AI to handle this kind of practice that you are telling to?
This is my test, let's say. Because I always try to, you know, don't have a digital gap with my students. Everything that they like, the majority of this generation Z like, I suppose that I should like to. I don't have permission to dislike it as a teacher. I should like it too, I should understand it too, and I should, as a generation X, you know, teacher, should teach them how to use it. So we teach them. We teach how to write a good prompt in AI, how to appraise what AI tools provide, how it can be, you know, rechecked, the plagiarism aspects of using AI tools. You know, they learn and they know that they cannot cheat us. This is the important point. They know that they cannot teach us.
Yeah.
Cheat
totally
us,
incongruence.
Because I am more expert than them in AI tools that they are using. So teaching is somehow.
So there's a message from your practice. So there's a message from your practice. There's a message from your practice that faculty should also be trained, if not fully, at least minimally, in the era of the AI, in their teaching learning experience with the students. Thank you.
Yes, the resistance is useless. In my opinion. So the guidance is useful.
The answer.
Resistance to their taste, we will achieve nothing. And we will lose. This will not be a win-win game. It will be a win-lose game. Win to students and lose to us. And we should be ready for alpha generation. So because they are somehow, you know, let's say somehow dragons in my opinion, because I suppose that generation Z will have difficulty with generation alpha. Poor us that we are in generation Y or X, or even more.
I think I'm still in XY.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think great. I very reluctant to stop the conversation, but due to time constraint, I would like to thanks SIVU for giving this opportunity to Dr. Rita, and wonderful session. And we have still, 16 participants engaged up till now. And I would just really remind all of you to stay tuned, follow SIVU YouTube channel, and recordings of all the sessions we will upload there, and maybe we will have soon another session. So once again, thanks, Dr. Rita, and have uh, the enjoyable journey of using the tool and reducing the gap. Thanks.
Thank you very much
Any
for your efforts, for your, your precious efforts to expand knowledge among the Society of Medical Educationalists. Thank you very much, Professor Shabi.
Is
Thank you
Prof.
very much,
Zadi behind
Hassan.
us? Prof. Zadi behind us.
Professor Shahid, everybody. I do love to be a part of your community. Thank you very much.
You are like a family.
Yes.
Grateful, always grateful for your support.
Thank you very much.
And
Thank
our
you.
guru is Prof. Shabi Zadi.
Thank you. Hope to see you in person soon. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye then. Thank you.
Bye.